The cycle I am going to reveal to you tonight is the very rhythm of creation itself. When repeated with understanding and persistence, it will cause reality as you know it to collapse and reshape itself in harmony with your desires. This is not magic, it is law. Consider for a moment, what is it you truly desire? Is it wealth? Is it love? Is it perfect health? Whatever it may be, I tell you with absolute certainty that it already exists in what I call the fourth dimensional world, the world. Your task is not to create it, but to appropriate it through this specific cycle of consciousness. This cycle consists of 4 distinct stages, which when repeated, especially with the int and persistence of 100 repetitions, as you've asked to understand, will invariably externalize your desire in your 3-dimensional world. Let me elaborate on each stage. The first stage is clarity. You must define with crystal clarity what it is you wish to experience. Vague longings produce vague results. When I say clarity, I mean you must know precisely what you desire in its complete detail. If it is wealth you seek, what exact sum? If it is a relationship, with what qualities? If it is a position, with what specific attributes? Many fail at this first critical step because they say, I want more money or I want better health, without defining the exact state they wish to occupy. Remember, precision in your desire creates precision in its fulfillment. Take a moment now and define your desire with absolute clarity. See it, feel it, know it in its completed form. The second stage is assumption. This is perhaps the most transformative stage of all. Having clarified your desire, you must now assume the feeling of its fulfillment. This is not pretending. This is entering psychologically into the state of consciousness where your desire is already fulfilled. Wayne tells you this. If you desire to be wealthy, how would you feel if you already wealthy? If you desire perfect health, how would you feel if you were in perfect health? That feeling state is what you must capture and assume as true right now. The secret is to occupy the state in consciousness before it is visible to your mortal eye. You must dare to commit yourself completely to this new concept of yourself. You must be willing to die to your present concept of self and be born to your desire concept. This psychological death and rebirth is the essence of true transformation. When I speak of assumption, I am speaking of a definite psychological technique. You must mentally construct a scene which would imply the fulfillment of your desire. Enter that scene. Make it as real as this room is real. Touch the objects in your imagined scene. Listen to the conversations. Smell the aromas. Feel the emotions that would be yours if your desire were now fulfilled. But never, you might say, this is merely daydreaming. No, my dear friends, this is not idle fantasy. This is the creative use of imagination, which is God in action within you. For imagination is not something apart from you. It is your very self and the eternal underlying reality of all things. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are actually experiencing what I call a controlled waking dream. This controlled waking dream, when persisted in, will harden into fact that is law and nothing can prevent it. The third stage of this transformative cycle is persistence. Having assumed the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you must persist in this new state regardless of appearances. The world may continue to show you evidence of your old state. Your senses may deny the reality of your assumption. Circumstances may seem to contradict your new concept of self. This is the point where most people falter. But I tell you this, the evidence of your senses is only the shadow of past assumptions. Your present environment, your present circumstances, your present bank balance, your present relationships, these are all but reflections of states previously occupied in consciousness. They have no power to persist when you withdraw your attention from them. Persistence does not mean effort or struggle. It means fidelity to your new concept of self. It means remaining faithful to the feeling of your wish fulfilled, regardless of appearances. This requires a peculiar form of detachment indifference to the evidence of your senses while maintaining an unwavering confidence in the reality of your assumption. When doubt or fear arises, and they will arise, return at once to your clarified desire and your assumption of its fulfillment. Do not fight the doubt or fear, for what you resist persists. Simply redirect your attention to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. This is true persistence. The fourth and final stage of this cycle is release. Having clarified your desire, assumed the feeling of its fulfillment, and persisted in this assumption, you must now release it completely. By release, I do not mean abandonment of your desire. I mean release of anxiety, release of doubt, release of the when and how your desire will manifest. This release is actually the Sabbath of your creative cycle. It is that point where you rest in the absolute confidence that what you have planted in consciousness must inevitably come to flower in your experience. It is living in the calm assurance that what you have assumed as true in consciousness is now being crystallized in the material world through a series of events you could not possibly devise. Release means you no longer mentally check to see if your desire is coming. You no longer anxiously look for signs of its manifestation. You no longer discuss it with others seeking validation. You have planted the seed, and now you allow the divine process to bring it to harvest in its own perfect timing. These 4 stages, clarity, assumption, persistence, and release, constitute the complete cycle, which when repeated, especially 100 times, as you've suggested, will inevitably cause reality to collapse and reshape itself according to your conscious assumption. Now, why 100 repetitions? There is something profound about persistence to this degree. When you repeat this cycle 100 times, you reach a threshold of consciousness. You saturate your entire being with your new concept of self until it becomes your predominant state. Consider the biblical story of the persistent widow who, through her continuous asking, finally received what she sought. Or recall the story of Elijah, who sent his servant 7 times to look for evidence of rain before the drought was broken. These are symbolic representations of the principle I am sharing with you tonight. When you repeat this cycle 100 times, several transformative processes occur simultaneously. First, you wear away all contrary beliefs through sheer persistence. Second, you build tremendous momentum in consciousness. Third, you reach a point where your new state feels more natural than your old state. And fourth, you establish such a deep conviction that the outer world has no choice but to conform to your inner assumption. Let me share with you a personal experience to illustrate this principle. Many years ago, I desired to come to America from Barbados. I had no obvious means of doing so, no money for passage, no connections in America, but I clarified exactly what I desired to lecture on this principle in America. I assumed the feeling of standing before audiences sharing this truth. I persisted in this assumption regardless of the seeming impossibility of my desire, and I released all anxiety about how this would come to pass. I did not do this cycle once or twice. I lived in this assumption constantly, and though it seemed impossible, a series of events occurred that no one could have anticipated bringing me to America exactly as I envisioned. This was not coincidence. This was law in operation. When you repeat this cycle with intensity and conviction, especially 100 times, you create what I call a psychological climate, the manifestation of your desire not only possible but inevitable. You reach a point where doubt cannot survive in your consciousness, where fear finds no foothold, where your new concept of self becomes so real that nothing can dislodge it. Now let me address a question that may arise in your mind. Must I literally repeat this cycle 100 times in succession? The number 100 represents completeness, thorahes, absolute conviction. You might perform this cycle formally once in the morning and once in the evening, but carry the feeling throughout your day. Or you might devote an entire day to cycling through these stages repeatedly until your whole being is saturated with the reality of your assumption. The exact method is not as important as the intensity and sincerity with which you perform each repetition. One repetition performed with complete absorption and emotional intensity is worth more than 50 repetitions done mechanically without feeling. Another question you might have is, how long will it take for my desire to manifest? This varies according to several factors. The intensity of your desire, the clarity of your assumption, your fidelity to the new state, and what I call the distance between your present concept of self and your desired concept. Some desires manifest instantly, some within days or weeks, others may take months. But remember this, time is the illusion of consciousness. In the realm of true causation, the fourth dimensional world of consciousness you desire is already fulfilled the moment you assume it to be so. Its appearance in the three-dimensional world is only the shadow following the substance. Let me now give you a practical method for applying this cycle. Begin tonight as you prepare for sleep. Sleep is the most receptive state of consciousness when the subjective mind is most open to impression. First, clarify exactly what you desire. See it in your mind's eye with perfect clarity. Second, construct a scene which would imply the fulfillment of your desire. Perhaps it is a friend congratulating you, or perhaps it is simply you experiencing the joy of your fulfilled desire. Third, enter this scene completely. Feel its reality. Feel the naturalness of it being so. Feel the gratitude that would be yours if this were now true. And fourth, fall asleep in this assumption, releasing all anxiety about results. As you drift into sleep while feeding the reality of your fulfilled desire, you are engaging in what I call the law of identical harvest. Just as in nature, a seed always produces after its kind, a state of consciousness always materializes after its kind. Plant the seed of your desire in the fertile soil of sleep. Water it with the feeling of reality, and it must produce after its kind. Repeat this process each night without fail. During your waking hours, whenever doubt or contrary evidence appears, gently return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Do not fight the current circumstances. Simply be faithful to your new assumption. As you persist in this practice, you will notice subtle changes beginning to occur. Perhaps someone will make a remark that aligns with your desire. Perhaps a small opportunity will present itself. These are what I call the first fruits of your assumption. They are signs that the seed you have planted is beginning to germinate. Do not be discouraged if the complete manifestation does not appear immediately. Remember, in nature there is a gestation period for all seeds. Your psychological seed follows the same law. The invisibility of the process does not indicate its absence. The oak is in the acorn, though invisible to the physical eye. Now let me tell you why this process works with such mathematical precision. The outer world is nothing more than a projection of your states of consciousness. When you truly grasp this, you will understand that there is nothing to change but yourself. Change your concept of self and you change your world. This is the true meaning of the biblical statement. DA, transformed by the renewing of your mind. Your mind is not something you possess. It is what you are. When you renew your mind through this cycle of consciousness, you are literally being born anew, and your world must transform accordingly. Reality is infinitely plastic, awaiting the impress of your assumption. It has no existence independent of your consciousness of it. The furniture in this room appears solid and substantial, but modern physics has revealed that it is mostly empty space, patterns of energy awaiting interpretation by consciousness. So true is every circumstance and condition in your life. The cycle I have shared with you tonight is not positive thinking, not affirmation, not visualization in the ordinary sense. It is a fundamental law of consciousness that operates with or without your knowledge of it. What makes it powerful, when consciously applied, is that you are no longer allowing states to be activated in you by default or by circumstance. You are consciously choosing the state from which you experience life. Consider carefully what I am telling you. If consciousness is the only reality and your assumptions determine which aspects of reality you experience, then mastering the cycle is equivalent to mastering life itself. When you repeat this cycle 100 times with sincerity and emotional intensity, you are programming the very substance of reality. Each repetition strengthens your new self-concept. Each repetition weakens contrary beliefs. Each repetition builds momentum and consciousness. Each repetition moves you closer to the threshold where your assumption must externalize itself in your world. This is why persistence is so crucial. Many give up just before the threshold is reached. They practice for a while, see no immediate results, and abandon their assumption. But had they persisted just a little longer, just a few more repetitions of the cycle, they would have witnessed the collapse of the old reality and the emergence of the new. Think of consciousness as a stream that has been flowing in a particular direction, carving out a deep channel over time. Your habitual thinking, your chronic assumptions about yourself and life have created this channel. To redirect the stream requires persistent effort in the new direction until a new channel is formed. 100 repetitions of this cycle will carve such a channel. Now I want to address another important aspect of this process, the emotional component. Feeling is the secret. Your assumption must be accompanied by feeling to be effective. Cold intellectual assumption has little power to transform, but assumption warmed by genuine feeling becomes alive and active. When I speak of feeling, I do not necessarily mean intense emotion. I mean the feeling of naturalness, the feeling of this is so. It is the difference between saying I will be wealthy and feeling I am wealthy. It is the difference between affirming health and feeling the ease and vitality of perfect health. The feeling makes it real in consciousness. This principle is expressed in Scripture as whatever you desire when you pray, believe that you receive them and you shall have them. Note carefully the present tense. Believe that you receive them now, not that you will receive them in the future. This psychological receiving in the present moment is the secret of effective prayer. I tell you a mystery. Time exists only in consciousness. Past, present, and future are merely arrangements of events in consciousness. When you assume your desire is fulfilled now, you are actually moving in consciousness to that point in time where your desire is already fulfilled. From that perspective, looking backward, the events that lead to its fulfillment are already completed. This is why release is such an important part of the cycle. When you truly feel your desire is fulfilled now in consciousness, anxiety about its manifestation becomes impossible. You cannot worry about receiving what you have already received. This state of consciousness, repeated 100 times with conviction, creates an unshakable certainty that reshapes reality around you. Let me explain further why repeating this cycle 100 times is so powerful. Consciousness has momentum. Your current life situation has momentum based on years of assumptions. To redirect this momentum requires counter-momentum of sufficient force. Each repetition of this creative cycle builds this counter-momentum. It is like turning a heavy flywheel. The first few turns require great effort and produce little movement. But as you persist, each turn becomes easier and the flywheel begins to move with increasing speed. Eventually, it turns with its own momentum and little additional effort is required. So it is with consciousness. The first few repetitions of this cycle may seem to produce little external result, but do not be deceived by appearances. Each repetition is building momentum in consciousness. Each repetition is turning the flywheel. Persist through 100 repetitions, and you will reach the point where your new assumption moves forward under Wayne Dyer's and Banny pace in your outer world. Another benefit of 100 repetitions is the dissolution of doubt. Doubt is the only enemy of your desires, but doubt cannot maintain itself in the face of persistent assumption. When you repeat this cycle 100 times, you simply wear out all contrary beliefs through sheer persistence. Consider the biblical story of the walls of Jericho. The Israelites marched around the city 7 times, and on the 7th day the walls collapsed. This is a perfect metaphor for what happens when you repeat this cycle of consciousness. The walls of your current reality, built by past assumptions, cannot withstand the persistent march of your new assumption. They must collapse. But remember, the collapse of reality is not destruction, it is rearrangement. The same substance that formed your old reality now reshapes itself to conform to your new assumption. Nothing is lost or is transformed. Now let me address what may be your greatest challenge in applying this principle: the evidence of your senses. Your senses will continue for a time to show you evidence contrary to your assumption. This is where most people falter. They assume the feeling of their wish fulfilled today, but tomorrow, when circumstances appear unchanged, they abandon their assumption. This is a fundamental error. Your senses show you only the effects of past assumptions. They cannot show you your present assumption until it has had time to project itself outward as effect. This time lag between assumption and its visible manifestation is the testing point of faith. By faith, I do not mean blind belief. I mean fidelity to your assumption regardless of sensory evidence to the contrary. I mean the courage to remain loyal to your invisible assumption rather than to visible circumstances. This faith, maintained through 100 repetitions of the cycle, will inevitably transform the invisible into the visible. When you look at your current bank balance and it contradicts your assumption of wealth, you must choose which you will accept as reality: the visible bank balance or your invisible assumption. When your body shows symptoms that contradict your assumption of perfect health, you must choose where to place your faith: in the visible symptoms or in your invisible assumption. This choice, made consistently in favor of your assumption through 100 repetitions, is what causes reality to collapse and reshape itself according to your desire. The visible can persist only as long as you give it life through your attention and belief. Withdraw belief from appearances. Transfer it completely to your assumption, and appearances must change. There is another benefit to repeating this cycle 100 times. It creates what I call a new normal in consciousness. After 100 sincere repetitions, your new state begins to feel more natural than your old state. It becomes your default position, your resting place in consciousness. When this occurs, you no longer need to consciously maintain your assumption. It has become part of your self-concept as natural and effortless as breathing. At this point, manifestation accelerates dramatically because there is no longer any conflict in consciousness. Let me share another personal experience. When I first desired to own my own home in Beverly Hills, it seemed impossible based on my financial circumstances at the time. But I clarified exactly what I desired: the type of home, the location, even the feeling of walking through its rooms. I assumed the feeling of owning this home. I persisted in this assumption despite appearances, and I released all anxiety about how it would come to pass. I repeated this cycle not once or twice, but continuously until the feeling of owning this home became my normal feeling state. I did not constantly affirm I will own a home or struggle to believe it. I simply lived from the assumption that I already owned it. Within a remarkably short time, a series of unexpected events occurred, bringing me the exact home I had imagined in the exact location in a way no one could have planned or predicted. This was not chance or good fortune. This was law in operation. The principle I am sharing with you tonight has been taught in various forms throughout history. In Scripture, it is written, "All things whatsoever you ask in prayer, believing you shall receive." In more modern terms, we might say consciousness is the only reality, and what you assume as true in consciousness must externalize itself in your world. This principle is not dependent on any particular religion or belief system. It is as practical and demonstrable as any law of physics. Just as gravity operates, whether you believe in it or not, this law of consciousness operates with or without your recognition of it. The difference is that while you cannot consciously control gravity, you can consciously control your assumptions. And in doing so, you control the very substance of your experience. This is the true meaning of dominion. Not dominion over others, but dominion over your own consciousness, which is dominion over your life. When you repeat this cycle 100 times with sincerity and emotional intensity, you are exercising this dominion, its highest form. You are consciously choosing the state from which you will experience life rather than accepting whatever state is activated in state. Now let me address what may be another concern. Can I use this principle to help others? Yes, but with an important qualification. You cannot violate another's free will through this principle. You can, however, assume that they are as you desire them to be. If you have a loved one who is ill, do not focus on changing their illness. Instead, assume they are well. Feel the joy and gratitude you would feel if they were already perfectly healthy. See them in your mind's eye, full of vitality. Hear their voice, strong and clear. Feel their hand warm and firm in yours. By assuming this state for them, you are not manipulating them. You are creating an opportunity in consciousness for them to step into this state if they choose. Your assumption becomes an invasion, not a compulsion. The same applies to relationships, to business dealings, to any interaction with others. Assume they are as you would have them be, not to control them, but to create a state in consciousness to which they can rise if they are willing. Another question that may arise is, what if I have multiple desires? Should I apply this cycle to all of them simultaneously? This is a matter of focus and intensity. I recommend focusing on one primary desire until it manifests, especially when first practicing this principle. Once you have experienced success with one desire, your faith in the principle will be strengthened, making it easier to apply to other desires. Eventually, you will reach a point where you can maintain multiple assumptions simultaneously, but begin with one clear desire. Now, let me share with you a deeper understanding of why reality collapses in your favor when you master this cycle. Reality as you perceive it is not fixed or solid. It is fluid, responsive, and fundamentally mental in nature. What appears solid and unchangeable is actually a pattern of energy held in place by habitual consciousness. When you introduce a new pattern in consciousness through persistent assumption, you create what physicists might call constructive interference with the old pattern. As this new pattern strengthens through repetition, it eventually cancels out the old pattern and establishes itself as the dominant reality. This is not metaphysical speculation. It aligns perfectly with our modern understanding of quantum physics. At the quantum level, particles exist in multiple potential states until observed. The act of observation collapses these potentials into a single experience. Your consciousness through assumption is performing this collapse, selecting from infinite potentials the experience that matches your state. The 100 repetitions ensure that your collapse of reality is not random or temporary, but consistent and permanent. Each repetition strengthens the signal, clarifies the pattern until reality has no choice but to conform. Another way of understanding this process is through the concept of resonance. Every state of consciousness has a unique frequency or vibration. Your current life experience resonates with your habitual state of consciousness. When you change your state through assumption, you change your frequency. At first, this new frequency may be weak compared to your habitual frequency, but as you repeat the cycle, the new frequency strengthens. After 100 sincere repetitions, it becomes dominant. At this point, circumstances, events, people, and conditions that resonate with this new frequency are drawn into your experience, while those that do not resonate fall away. This is the true meaning of the biblical statement, "To him who has more will be given, from him who has not. Even what he has will be taken away." It refers not to material possessions, but to states of consciousness. When you establish a state firmly in consciousness through repetition, more of its kind must be given to you. It is law. Now let me give you some practical guidance on how to structure your 100 repetitions for maximum effectiveness. You might begin with 21 consecutive days of morning and evening practice. Each morning upon waking and each evening before sleep, go through the complete cycle of clarity, assumption, persistence, release. The morning session programs your consciousness for the day. The evening session impresses your subconscious just before sleep when it is most receptive. After 21 days of this practice, 42 repetitions, you will notice significant shifts in your consciousness and likely in your outer world as well. Continue for another 29 days, bringing your total to 50 days or 100 sessions. By this point, your assumption will have gained tremendous momentum. Many desires would have already manifested, and those that haven't will show unmistakable signs of movement toward manifestation. During this period, it is crucial that you protect your assumption from doubt and contradiction. Be selective about what you read, what you watch, and especially what conversations you engage in. Do not discuss your desire with those who might question or ridicule it. Keep your assumptions sacred and private until it manifests. Also, throughout your day, whenever your mind is not actively engaged in necessary tasks, return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Make it your mental home, your resting place. This continuous return, even if brief, reinforces your formal practice and accelerates manifestation. Let me address one more important aspect of this process: detachment. By detachment, I do not mean indifference to your desire. I mean detachment from anxiety about its fulfillment, detachment from the need for specific methods of fulfillment. True detachment comes from absolute confidence in the law. When you know with certainty that what you have assumed in consciousness must externalize itself in your world, anxiety becomes impossible. You rest in the assurance that your desire is already yours, and the only place where creation occurs, consciousness. This detachment actually accelerates manifestation because it removes resistance. Anxiety, worry, and constant checking for results are forms of resistance that delay manifestation. They imply that you do not yet have what you are assuming to have. This contradiction in consciousness creates confusion in the creative process. When you truly grasp that having the feeling of your wish fulfilled is actually having the wish itself in the one place where all creation begins, you will understand why release is so important. You release not because you're giving up on your desire, but because in consciousness you already possess it. As you cycle through these stages 100 times with sincerity and emotional intensity, you are actually performing a profound act of creation. You are participating consciously in the very process through which all of reality comes into being. You are exercising your divine prerogative as a creative being. This is not egotism or self-aggrandizement. This is recognition of your true nature. For the power of assumption is not a power given to you, it is what you are. You are divine imagination embodied, clothed in human form, to experience the fruits of your assumptions. When you assume a state, you are not pretending to be what you are not. You are selecting from infinite potential states, one to express and experience. This selection, repeated with conviction 100 times, becomes your dominant state and therefore your dominant experience. The world around you, the circumstances of your life, the events you encounter, these are all shadows, reflections of your state of consciousness. Change the state. Repeat the new state 100 times with conviction, and the shadows must change accordingly. This is the great secret hidden in plain sight throughout history. It is the pearl of great price, the treasure hidden in a field, the kingdom within. It is the knowledge that your consciousness is the sole creative power in your experience, and that by controlled imagination, by assumption persisted in, you can transform your entire world. As you apply this cycle, especially through 100 repetitions, you will discover that the universe is infinitely more responsive to consciousness than you had previously recognized. Doors will open that seem permanently closed. Resources will appear that seem non-existent. People will enter your life who perfectly align with your new state. Circumstances will arrange themselves to support your assumption in ways no human planning could devise. This is not coincidence or good fortune. This is law in operation. Just as water must flow downhill, reality must conform to your persistent assumption. After 100 sincere repetitions of this cycle, you establish such a clear and powerful pattern in consciousness that reality has no choice but to rearrange itself accordingly. Remember clarity in your desire, complete assumption of its fulfillment, unwavering persistence regardless of appearances, and perfect release of anxiety about its manifestation. This cycle repeated with sincerity and emotional intensity, especially 100 times, will inevitably cause reality to collapse and reshape itself in perfect harmony with your assumption. Tonight, as you return to your homes, begin this practice. Do not delay. Do not wait for circumstance to change. Do not wait until you feel more worthy or more prepared. Begin now, for now is the only time there is. The present moment is the only point of power. Define with perfect clarity what you desire. Assume completely the feeling of its fulfillment. Persist in this assumption regardless of appearances. Release all anxiety about its manifestation and repeat this cycle faithfully until your consciousness is so saturated with the feeling of your fulfilled desire that it becomes your permanent dwelling place. Do this, my dear friends, and I promise you, by the law that cannot be broken, your world must conform to your assumption. Reality must collapse and reshape itself to match the pattern you have established in consciousness. This is not hope or speculation. This is law as certain as gravity, as reliable as the rising of the sun. You are not a helpless observer of life. You are his creator through the power of conscious assumption. Exercise this power deliberately, persistently, especially through 100 repetitions of this creative cycle, and watch in wonder as reality reshapes itself in perfect harmony with your desire. The choice is yours. The power is yours. The law is yours to command. Begin tonight and step into the life you have imagined. For imagination, persistently exercised through this cycle, especially 100 times, must become reality. That is the promise. That is the law. That is your divine inheritance. Remember, all things are possible to him who believes. Believe by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Repeat this cycle 100 times with sincerity and emotional intensity, and watch as the entire universe conspires to make your assumption your living reality. Consciousness is the one and only reality. Everything else, every circumstance, every condition, every event in your life is but a shadow, a reflection of your states of consciousness. Change the state by persistent assumption, and the reflection must change. This is the simple yet profound truth I leave with you tonight. Apply it faithfully through 100 repetitions of this creative, for your sake, your spit power. For when consciousness leads, all of reality must follow. For what is manifestation but the natural expression of consciousness? It is the externalization of an internal state. When you truly understand this principle, you will never again doubt your creative power. Tonight I bring you tidings of great joy. Your manifestation is confirmed. The universe is responding to your assumptions, to the state you have occupied, and everything needed for the fulfillment of your desires now in motion. I speak not of some distant hope or promise for the future. I speak of a principle that operates with mathematical precision in the eternal now. Before they call, I will answer, says Scripture. Your manifestation is already complete in what we might call the fourth dimensional world, and it is now being projected into your three-dimensional experience. Many of you have been faithful in your imaginal acts. You have persisted in the assumption that your desire is fulfilled. You have slept in the consciousness of the wish fulfilled. and now the universe conspires to show you the fruits of your mental labor. This is law, not luck. This is principle, not chance. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Your faith, which is nothing more than your controlled and directed consciousness, has substantiated your desire in the spiritual realm. The evidence is now making its way into your visible world, and this message reaches you at the perfect time to confirm what you already know in the depths of your being. Do you remember the countless nights you spent in faithful prayer? Not the prayer of begging, but the prayer of assumption, feeling yourself into the state of your wish fulfilled. Those moments were not in vain. They were creative acts as tangible in their cognitive power as any physical action in this world. Consider this truth. Whatever you are conscious of being, you must and shall become. This is the true meaning of manifestation. It is not about attracting something foreign to yourself. It is about embodying in consciousness the very state that you desire to express. I am is the self-definition of the absolute. When you declare, I am wealthy, I am healthy, I am loved, you are defining yourself by these states, and the universe must respond accordingly. Many of you have asked for signs. You have looked to the outer world for confirmation of your inner work, and here it is. This message is your sign. The universe has sent you this precise communication to confirm that your manifestation is unfolding according to divine timing. Not a moment too soon, not a second too late. Let me share with you a principle that has transformed countless lives. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled and persist in that assumption despite all evidence to the contrary, you are exercising true faith. And this faith is not blind hope. It is the controlled direction of consciousness, the most powerful force in existence. The outer world may still show you conditions that contradict your desire. Friends and family may question your certainty. Your own senses may argue against your assumption. But I tell you this, the outer world is merely the shadow of past assumptions. It has no power to create or to prevent. It simply reflects. What you are experiencing now is the harvest of seeds planted in the past. But in this very moment, you are planting new seeds through your I am consciousness, and those seeds must bear fruit after their kind. It is law. Tonight I invite you to deepen your awareness of this principle. Feel the relief, the satisfaction, the gratitude that naturally accompanies the fulfillment of desire. For when you genuinely feel these emotions, you are not anticipating future fulfillment. You are acknowledging present possession. This is the secret of manifestation. Some of you may ask, but Wayne, if my desire is already fulfilled in the spiritual realm, why does it not immediately appear in my world? Remember the divine timing of all things. Between the impregnation of consciousness and the manifestation in the outer world, there is a period of gestation. The seed must develop according to its nature. During this period, you must maintain your faith. You must continue to live from the end, occupying the state of fulfillment in your imagination. For imagination is the very substance of reality clothed in the appearance of the outer world. Now let us consider the power of your attention. Whatever you focus upon expands in your experience. If you focus on lack, you perpetuate lack. If you focus on abundance, you perpetuate abundance. This is why I urge you to withdraw your attention from all circumstances that contradict your desire. Give them no power by giving them no thought. The universe responds not to your wishes or your wants, but to your consciousness, to what you accept as true. When you truly accept in the depths of your being that your desire is fulfilled, all the powers of heaven and earth move to bring about its expression in your world. Many of you have struggled with this concept. You have tried to convince yourselves that you believe while secretly harboring doubts. But true faith is not self-deception. It is the natural response to a spiritual fact clearly perceived. When you truly see in your imagination the reality of your fulfilled desire, doubt becomes impossible. Consider this. When you sit in a chair, do you doubt that it will support you? Of course not. You have complete faith in the chair because your experience has taught you to trust it. In the same way as you practice living from the end and witness the resulting manifestations, your faith in this principle becomes unshakable. Tonight, I bring you confirmation. The universe has guided you to this message as evidence that your inner work is bearing fruit. Your manifestation is unfolding exactly as it should in divine order and perfect timing. remember the words of Scripture. All things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive. The key word here is believing, not hoping, not wishing, but knowing with unwavering certainty. And this certainty comes not from external evidence, but from the clarity of your vision in consciousness. Let me tell you a story from my own experience that illustrates this principle. Many years ago, I desired to travel to Barbados to visit my family, but I had no money for passage and no apparent means of obtaining it. Rather than dwelling on these limiting circumstances, I assumed the feeling of already being in Barbados, surrounded by my loved ones. Each night as I fell asleep, I would imagine the unique sounds of my island home, feel the tropical breeze on my skin, and hear the voices of my family welcoming me. I persisted in this assumption, never wavering in my faith. Within a short time, through a series of events that no human could have orchestrated, I received an unexpected sum of money, exactly the amount needed for my passage. The outer circumstances rearranged themselves to conform to my inner assumption. This was not coincidence, it was law. I tell you this not to impress you, but to impress upon you the absolute certainty of this principle. What you persistently imagine and feel as true must and will externalize itself in your experience. There is no other way. Now, some of you may be thinking of your specific desires: a new home, a loving relationship, financial abundance, perfect health. Whatever your desire may be, the principle remains the same. You must assume the feeling of already being, having, or doing that which you desire. You must live from the end. This requires a fundamental shift in consciousness. Instead of seeing yourself as moving toward your goal, see yourself as having already attained it. Instead of working to achieve your desire, work from the position of its fulfillment. This subtle distinction makes all the difference in the world. When you truly understand this, manifestation ceases to be a mystery and becomes a simple matter of aligning your consciousness with the reality you wish to experience. The universe is not responding to your actions, your words, or even your conscious thoughts. It is responding to your state of being, to what you accept as true in the depths of your soul. Let me address a question that arises in many minds. What about others? Can I manifest changes in another person's behavior? Remember this eternal truth. Everyone in your world is yourself pushed out. What you experience in others is a reflection of your own consciousness. You cannot change another through force of will or through external action. But when you change your conception of another, when you see them in your imagination as you wish them to be, they must conform to this new ideal. Not because you have power over them, but because there's only one consciousness diversified in seemingly separate beings. This is why forgiveness is so crucial to manifestation. When you truly forgive, you are releasing the old conception of a person or situation and creating space for a new expression. Forgiveness is not about condoning behavior. It is about freeing yourself from the bonds of past impressions. I urge you to practice radical forgiveness of others, of circumstances, and most importantly of yourself. For many of you carry the burden of self, condemnation, believing yourselves unworthy of your desires. But I tell you this, worthiness is not a prerequisite for manifestation. The sun shines on the just and the unjust alike. The law of consciousness responds to all without judgment or discrimination. Your desires are not random. They are placed within you by the divine as a blueprint for your expansion and fulfillment. The very fact that you can conceive of a desire is evidence of your capacity to achieve it. For consciousness cannot desire something that it cannot express. Now let us turn our attention to the concept of divine timing. Many of you grow impatient when your manifestation does not appear according to your schedule. But remember, in the realm of spirit, there is no time as you know it. There is only the eternal now in which all possibilities exist simultaneously. What appears as delay in the outer world is often divine timing in the spiritual realm. The seed you have planted in consciousness may require a period of gestation. During this time, unseen forces are at work, arranging circumstances, inspiring actions, guiding individuals, all to bring about the perfect expression of your desire. Trust the process, trust the timing, and most importantly, trust yourself, the God self within you that knows exactly how and when to bring your good to manifestation. I want to address another common obstacle to manifestation, the tendency to dig up the seed to see if it's growing. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't continuously unearth it to check its progress. You trust that it is developing according to its nature, invisible to your eyes, but absolutely certain in its growth. In the same way, once you have planted the seed of desire in consciousness through your imaginal act, allow it to develop without anxious monitoring. Your role is to water it with continued faith and to protect it from the weeds of doubt and fear. Many of you sabotage your manifestations by constantly checking for evidence. And when that evidence is not immediately apparent, you fall back into the old state of lack or limitation, this vacillation between states, the manifestation of your desire. Choose your state consciously and dwell there faithfully. This is the art of manifestation, not the anxious pursuit of a future goal, but the peaceful occupation of a present reality in consciousness. Tonight, I bring you confirmation that your imaginal work is bearing fruit. The universe has guided you to this message as evidence of your creative power. Your manifestation is unfolding with perfect precision, and this communication is a signpost along the way. Consider the power of your words, which are the outer expression of your consciousness. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, says Scripture. Your declarations, both silent and spoken, shape your reality. So guard your speech, carefully ensuring that it aligns with your desired state, not with the limitations of the current appearance. Instead of saying, I am trying to manifest, say, I have manifested. Instead of saying, I hope it will happen, say, I am grateful that it has happened. Speak from the end, just as you imagine from the end. Let your words reflect not what your eyes show you, but what your imagination knows to be true. This brings us to an important aspect of manifestation, gratitude. Genuine gratitude is not merely saying thank you for something you hope to receive. It is the soul's recognition of already having received. When you give thanks from the depth of your being for your manifested desire, you are affirming its reality and consciousness and thus hastening its appearance in experience. Practice gratitude not as a technique to get something, but as an acknowledgement of something already possessed. This subtle distinction transforms gratitude from a method into a revelation of the truth that all you desire is already yours in consciousness. Now let me address those of you who have been practicing these principles without seeing the results you desire. First, examine your imaginal acts. Are you truly dwelling in the end, or are you subtly reinforcing the current limitations? Are you living from the state of fulfillment, or are you merely visiting it occasionally while maintaining residence in the state of lack? Manifestation requires consistency, not of effort, but of state. It is not the occasional intense imaginal session that brings results, but the habitual occupation of the desired state. Your assumptions to be effective must be more than mental exercises. They must become the core of your being. Many of you may find it challenging to maintain this consistency in the face of contradictory evidence. This is where the power of revision becomes invaluable. At the end of each day, review the events that seem to deny your desired state, and in your imagination, revise them to align with your ideal. If someone spoke words that imply limitation, revise the conversation in your mind to hear them confirming your abundance. If circumstances appear to move away from your goal, reimagine them as stepping stones toward it. This practice of revision prevents the accumulation of contradictory impressions and maintains the integrity of your chosen state. Let me emphasize a truth that many of you have overlooked. The outer world has no power to create or to prevent. It is purely responsive, never positive. Your circumstances do not determine your consciousness. Your consciousness determines your circumstances. Therefore, no matter what appears in your experience today, you have the power to transform it through a simple shift in consciousness. This shift is not a denial of current facts, but a recognition of a higher truth, that facts are merely the shadow of past assumptions and have no power to determine future experience. Many of you have asked about the role of action and manifestation. Should you act to bring about your desire, or should you wait for it to appear? The answer lies in understanding inspired action versus calculated action. When you genuinely occupy the state of your wish fulfilled, you will be moved from within to take certain actions. These actions will not be calculated efforts to achieve your desire, but natural expressions of the state you have assumed. They will feel effortless, joyful, and perfectly aligned with your being. This is inspired action. Action that flows from the state of fulfillment, not action that strives toward it. The distinction is subtle but significant. One comes from abundance, the other from lack. One expresses, the other pursues. Trust the inner prompting that comes from your assumed state and follow it without hesitation. Now let us consider a principle that few truly understand: the identity of imagination and reality. Most people believe that imagination is separate from reality, a kind of mental fantasy distinct from the solid facts of existence. But I tell you this, imagination is reality itself in a different dimension of expression. What you imagine is not less real than what you experience with your senses. It is simply operating on a different level of manifestation. The spiritual precedes and shapes the physical, just as the blueprint precedes and shapes the building. Your imaginal acts are the blueprints of your experience. When you truly grasp this principle, you will no longer suffer the anxiety of waiting for your desire to manifest. You will know that in the act of imagining, you have already received. The outer expression is merely the shadow following the substance of your imagination. The universe has sent you this confirmation because you are ready to elevate your understanding of manifestation from the level of technique to the level of principle. Techniques may be useful as aids to concentration, but it is the principle that produces results, and the principle is simple. Consciousness is the only reality, and what you are conscious of being, you must become. Many of you have divided your consciousness, believing one thing in your imagination while accepting something different as reality. This division must be healed for successful manifestation. There must be a perfect agreement between your inner and outer acceptance, between what you imagine and what you believe to be real. This is why I emphasize living from the end. When you truly live from the state of fulfillment, you do not mentally place your desire in the future. You experience it as present fact here and now. This present tense experience in imagination becomes the bridge of incidents leading to its physical expression. Consider this profound truth. The feeling is the secret, not the intellectual acceptance, not the verbal affirmation, but the feeling. When you can genuinely feel yourself into the state of your wish fulfilled, you have found the secret of manifestation. This feeling is more than emotion. It is the soul's recognition of a state as its own. It is the merging of your being with the desired state until there is no separation, no striving, no becoming, only being. Tonight, as the universe confirms your manifestation, I urge you to deepen this feeling. Let it permeate every aspect of your consciousness until you no longer remember what it was like to desire what you now possess in consciousness. Many of you wonder about the mechanics of manifestation. How exactly does the imaginal act translate into physical experience? While the complete answer transcends human understanding, we can comprehend this much. Consciousness is the substance from which all reality is formed, and imagination is the tool that shapes this substance. When you imagine, you are not creating mental pictures separate from reality. You are creating the very substance of experience in its initial form. This form then passes through various stages of manifestation until it appears as tangible reality. The time lag between the imaginal act and its physical expression is what you perceive as the process of manifestation. But in truth, there is no process, only the translation of a reality from one state of perception to another. The desire is fulfilled the moment you assume the feeling of its fulfillment in imagination. Its appearance in your outer world is merely the final stage of a journey already completed. Now let me address a question that troubles many sincere students of this principle. Why do some desires manifest quickly while others seem to take forever? The answer lies not in the magnitude of the desire, but in your acceptance of its fulfillment. Some states you accept easily without inner conflict or contradiction. These manifest quickly. Others you may consciously affirm while subconsciously denying, creating a division in consciousness that delays manifestation. The key to swift manifestation is wholehearted acceptance, not just with your conscious mind, but with your entire being. When every aspect of your consciousness aligns with your desire, when there is no part of you that questions or doubts its fulfillment, manifestation becomes instantaneous. This is why I urge you to examine your beliefs, not just your conscious beliefs, but the deeper assumptions that may be operating below the level of awareness. For these subconscious beliefs often exert more influence on your manifestations than your conscious affirmations. How do you uncover these hidden beliefs? By observing your manifestations. Your experience is the perfect mirror of your true beliefs. If your manifestations consistently fall short in a particular area, you can be certain that there is a limiting belief operating in that domain. Once identified, these beliefs can be transformed through the same principle that governs all manifestation, the conscious assumption of the opposite state. If you discover a belief in limitation, assume the feeling of abundance. If you uncover a belief in unworthiness, assume the feeling of deserving. this assumption persisted in will revise the subconscious programming and remove the block to manifestation. The universe has sent you this confirmation because you are ready to clear these hidden obstacles. You are prepared to align your entire being with your desire, creating the perfect conditions for manifestation. Let me now address the relationship between desire and detachment, which confuses many students of manifestation. You are told to desire fervently, yet detached from the outcome. How is this possible? The answer lies in understanding the true nature of detachment. Detachment is not indifference to your desire. It is not pretending not to care. It is the profound recognition that your desire is already fulfilled in consciousness, and therefore there is nothing to be anxious about, nothing to strive for, nothing to worry over. It is the peace that comes from knowing the end is secure. True detachment comes naturally when you live from the end. When you genuinely feel that you already have what you desire, the desperate craving for it dissolves. You are detached not from the desire itself, but from the sense of lack that typically accompanies unfulfilled desire. This is the paradox manifestation. The more completely feel the fulfillment of your desire and imagination, the more detached you become from its absence in the outer world. And this very detachment accelerates its manifestation. The universe confirms your manifestation tonight because you have reached or are approaching this state of fulfilled detachment. You are learning to rest in the consciousness of completion, even as you wait for its expression in experience. Now let us explore an aspect of manifestation that is often overlooked: the role of your self-concept. Your self-concept is the collection of beliefs you hold about yourself, your identity, your worth, your capabilities. It determines not only what you can manifest, but what you will allow yourself to manifest. Many of you create specific manifestations that align with your desire only to sabotage them because they conflict with your deeper self-concept. If you see yourself as undeserving, no technique of manifestation will override this core belief. The manifestation may appear briefly, but it will not persist unless it aligns with who you believe yourself to be. This is why the most powerful manifestation work begins with the transformation of the self-concept. Before you can consistently manifest specific desires, you must manifest the self who naturally possesses those desires. You must revise your identity to match your aspirations. How do you revise your self-concept? Through the same principle that governs all manifestation, the conscious assumption of the state. You must assume the feeling of being the person who naturally experiences your desired reality. You must live from the identity that aligns with your aspirations. This work on the self-concept explains why some manifestations seem to require more time and persistence than others. When a desire aligns with your existing self-concept, it manifests easily. When it requires a profound shift in identity, the manifestation unfolds through a series of transformations, each building upon the last until the new self-concept is fully established. The universe has sent you this confirmation because you are ready to embrace a higher self-concept. You are prepared to release the limitations of the past and to assume the identity that naturally attracts your desires. Consider the words of Scripture. Put off the old man and put on the new man. This is not merely moral instruction. It is a practical guide to manifestation. The old man is your previous self-concept with all its limitations and contradictions. The new man is the self who naturally embodies your desires as you consistently embody this new self in imagination. The outer expression must follow. This brings us to another essential aspect of manifestation: persistence. Many of you practice these principles sporadically, assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled for a brief time, then returning to the old state of consciousness. This vacillation creates mixed results, manifestations that come and go, reflecting the inconsistency of your state. Persistence does not mean effort or strain. It means maintaining your chosen state regardless of appearances until it becomes your dwelling place. It means refusing to be moved by contradictory evidence, knowing that the outer must eventually conform to the inner. How long must you persist until your assumption hardens into fact? For some desires, this may occur quickly. For others, especially those that require significant revision of your self-concept, it may require more time, but the principle is certain. What you persistently assume must externalize itself in your experience. The universe confirms your manifestation because it recognizes your growing capacity for persistence. You are learning to maintain your chosen state with increasing faithfulness, creating the perfect conditions for manifestation. Now, let me address a question that arises for many sincere students. What about the desires of others? What if my manifestation conflicts with someone else's? This question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of consciousness and reality. In truth, there is only one consciousness appearing as many. Your manifestation cannot conflict with another's because at the deepest level there is no other. What appears as conflict is merely the outworking of different states of consciousness within the one mind. When you truly understand this principle, you realize that manifestation is not about imposing your will upon a separate reality. It is about aligning your individual expression of consciousness with the universal harmony. When your desire arises from this alignment, it naturally benefits all, and no conflict is possible. This is why I emphasize that true desire comes from the depths of your being, not from the superficial ego. The desires that are placed within you by the divine are always in harmony with the good of all because they arise from the one consciousness that embraces all. The universe confirms your manifestation because it recognizes the purity of your desire. As you move beyond ego-based, wanting to soul-inspire, desiring your manifestations, increasingly express the divine harmony that benefits all. Let me now address the role of surrender in manifestation, which seems paradoxical to many. You are told to assume control of your reality through conscious imagination, yet also to surrender to the divine will. How can you do both? The answer lies in understanding the true nature of surrender. Surrender is not the abdication of your creative power. It is not passive acceptance of whatever comes. It is the recognition that your individual consciousness is one with the divine consciousness and that your true desires arise from this oneness. When you surrender in the context of manifestation, you are releasing your attachment to the how and the when while maintaining absolute faith in the what. You are acknowledging that the wisdom of the universe may bring about your manifestation in ways that transcend your limit. Conscension. This surrender actually accelerates manifestation because it removes the tension and anxiety that often block the natural expression of your desire. It creates space for infinite intelligence to arrange the perfect conditions for your good to appear. The universe confirms your manifestation because it recognizes your growing capacity for this higher form of surrender. Not the surrender of powerlessness, but the surrender of trust and faith. As we approach the conclusion of this message, I want to emphasize truth that will transform your understanding of manifestation. Your outer world is not random or accidental. It is not determined by forces beyond your control. It is the precise externalization of your consciousness reflecting with perfect accuracy the states you have occupied and the assumptions you have embodied. This means that nothing in your experience is exempt from the law of consciousness. Nothing is outside your sphere of influence. Everything from your intimate relationships to your financial circumstances, from your physical health to your spiritual understanding, is subject to transformation through the conscious direction of your emanation. When you truly comprehend this principle, you cease to be a victim of circumstances and become the conscious creator of your reality. You no longer react to conditions, you generate them. You no longer wait for change. You initiate it through the deliberate revision of your assumptions. The universe confirms your manifestation because it recognizes your readiness to accept this level of responsibility for your experience. You are prepared to acknowledge that your life is the perfect reflection of your consciousness and to use this knowledge not for self-condemnation but for creative transformation. Tonight I invite you to accept this confirmation from the universe. Embrace the truth that your manifestation is unfolding with perfect precision, guided by the wisdom of your divine self. Trust the process even when the outer evidence suggests delay or failure. Know that the seed you have planted in consciousness must bear fruit after its kind. And remember this eternal principle. The feeling is the secret. Not the intellectual understanding, not the verbal affirmation, but the feeling of already being what you desire to be, of already having what you desire to have, of already experiencing what you desire to experience. As you integrate this principle into your being, as you make it the foundation of your daily practice, you will witness the miraculous unfoldment of your desires in ways that transcend your expectations. For the wisdom that guides manifestation exceeds human understanding, arranging circumstances and inspiring actions with a precision that no human mind could conceive. The universe has sent you this confirmation because you stand at the threshold of a new understanding, a deeper application of the principle of conscious creation. You are ready to move beyond technique to embodiment, beyond periodic practice to consistent assumption. Go forth in the certainty that your manifestation is confirmed. live from the state of fulfillment, regardless of appearances. Maintain your faith not as effort, but as the natural response to a truth clearly perceived. And watch as the outer world reshapes itself to match the inner reality you have established in consciousness. For this is the promise and the principle: what you are conscious of being, you must and shall become. It is law, not luck. It is principle, not chance, and it operates with mathematical precision in the life of a Oneian who applies it with understanding and faith. The universe confirms your manifestation. Accept this confirmation not as future promise, but as present fact. For in the reality of consciousness, where all manifestation begins, your desire is already fulfilled. Its appearance in time and space is merely the final stage of a journey already completed in the eternal.